concept of the moral panic began with a small event in 1964. On Easter Sunday, a group of young people clashed in Clacton-on-Sea. They were known as mods and rockers, distinct subcultural groups who differed in the clothes they wore, the music they listened to, and the motorcycles they rode. The initial conflict was actually relatively minor, consisting of a few fights and around £500 worth of damage. Yet almost 100 young people were arrested. The incident could easily have faded into obscurity as a relatively minor episode, but instead it became a national crisis. Newspapers exaggerated every detail, describing the events as riots and using phrases such as orgy of destruction and day of terror, whilst referring to scenes as being smeared with blood and violence. A local disturbance was transformed into a symbol of moral decline, and for several years the press repeatedly returned to the story. The sociologist Stanley Cohen studied the events through the lens of labelling theory. He noticed that the reaction to what had happened was far greater than the events themselves. The police, the courts, the media, and the public all behaved as though a major threat had emerged. The perception of danger was inflated far beyond reality. Cohen called this phenomena a moral panic. Cohen defined a moral panic as a condition, episode, person, or group of persons that emerges to become defined as a threat to societal values and interests. His focus was not on the actions of the mods and rockers themselves, but on society's exaggerated reaction. His question was not, why did they fight, but rather, why did society respond like this?
I was always playing three roles. I would sometimes walk around during the day dressed in jeans and trying to listen and overhear conversations and talk to kids at youth clubs and talk to kids in the street. And then I would change out of my gear and put on a suit and tie and go and interview a magistrate and hear a completely different version. And then I'd go home or I'd go to stay up in a club all night and come up the next morning and buy the Mirror or the Express and see another reality. But to see those three different realities, the world that it looked like for the kids, the world that it looked like for middle-class magistrates sitting miles away who's never been to the beach, and the world that it was like for a Daily Express reporter were different worlds. Not different worlds in the literal sense, but different worlds in the sense of different images of the same world. And that's what sociology is. You have to find some ways of reconciling, of finding the relationships between them.
In his analysis, Cohen identified several groups that take part in every moral panic. The media are the most visible. They exaggerate and simplify events, instilling fear, division, and moral concern. They identify heroes and villains and transform complex realities into moral dramas.
Were there a lot of them?
Yes, all crowd. We couldn't move. About 200, I should think,
and
all together in the buffet.
And they turned a table right over, hadn't they?
That was the first table. That's what I went round to see. And I thought, well, I've locked the side door. We have a side door. And I went to lock the door and they pushed me over.
Right
one
over
of them, one of the boys, very good-looking boy too, I wouldn't have thought it. And then they pulled me right across the buffet from the corner to the middle of the buffet, and then he ran out and put his arm through the plate glass door window.
And they just left you lying on the floor, didn't they?
No, one of the rockers picked me up, another rocker at another table. He was very sweet. Yeah.
The public must also be willing to believe the story being told. In the 1960s, an older generation, shaped by war and austerity, looked at youth culture with resentment. They saw young people as spoiled and disrespectful, and the moral panic surrounding the mods and rockers both drew upon and reinforced that belief. The police then respond to this public fear. They begin to make arrests, demand new powers, and treat symbolic acts of rebellion as serious crimes. Heavy-handed policing often fuels the very behaviour it seeks to control, and it creates a feedback loop of escalating conflict. Combined with sensational media coverage, this convinces those involved that the situation is much more extreme than it truly is, which leads to further disorder. Cohen described this process as deviance amplification. The exaggerated reporting and punitive responses actually intensify the behaviour being condemned. Finally, moral entrepreneurs, a term first used by Howard Becker, begin to emerge. They form campaigns and pressure groups that call for punishment and moral renewal. They speak in a language of righteousness, encouraging judgment, stigmatization, and stereotyping.
Have you ever seen anything like this happen before?
I haven't, no. No, I've seen the ban the bomb marches in London, but they've been a bit more orderly. These are the offshoots of some of the ban the bomb people, I think, that just come down here now that there's no ban the bomb marches, and they just come down here for kicks, I think.
The outcome is the creation of folk devils, individuals or groups who come to symbolize moral decline. They are portrayed as dangerous outsiders who threaten the moral fabric of society and are simplified until they no longer resemble actual human beings. Through this process, moral panics divide the world into two sides: us, the decent and respectable, and them, the deviant and corrupt. Cohen argued that moral panics are not simply overreactions. They are moments in which society redraws its moral boundaries. Moral panics fade, but they rarely disappear completely. They leave traces in law, policy, and culture. They reaffirm what society considers normal and remind people what they are expected to fear. Cohen wrote that moral panics are moments when the moral barricades are manned. They tell us less about the deviant group and more about the society that condemns them. In that sense, the study of moral panics is not really about the folk devils themselves. It is about the social response, how this drives our fears, and how those fears structure the world we live in. A variety of moral panics have emerged since the clashes between the mods and the rockers. These often revolve around issues such as immigration, youth subculture, welfare systems, and drug use. Let me know some examples you can identify in the comments.